The door to her father's study was slightly open. Leah pushed it. The document was on the desk, printed, official. She picked it up, read the words at the top. She stood there for a moment, 12 years old, completely still. Her father could never see this. Then she tore it, once, twice, again and again until there was nothing left to tear. She gathered every piece off the desk carefully, walked to the bin in the corner, dropped them in. She straightened her uniform and walked back out, closing the door quietly behind her, as if she had never been there. A 12-year-old girl just made a decision that could change everything. If you watched part 1 and part 2, you already know this family did not come this far to fall apart, but something happened. And before this story ends, you will know exactly what it was. Subscribe if you haven't, and stay with us, because this story is just getting started. The morning Jean Siwan left for his business trip, the IZ estate was louder than usual. Jiwon had decided that his father's suitcase was a personal attack and had staged a one-man protest against it by sitting directly on top of it with the focused determination of someone who had made a decision and was not open to negotiation. He was 4 years old. He had his mother's eyes and his father's expression and absolutely nobody's patience. "Jiwon," Linda said from the doorway. Jiwon looked at her. Looked at the suitcase, looked back at her. He did not move. Siwan crouched down in front of his son in his impeccably tailored dark suit and looked at him with that quiet expression that had made grown men in boardrooms reconsider their life choices. Jiwon looked back at him with the complete unbothered confidence of someone who had never once been intimidated by that face and was not about to start now. "I will be back," Siwan said. Jiwon considered this information seriously. Then he held up 3 fingers. 3 days, Linda, translated from the doorway. "He wants you back in 3 days. 5, Siwan said. Jiwon put 1 finger down, held up 2. "He says 2, Linda said. "Linda." "I'm just translating," she said, with complete innocence. Siwan looked at his son. Jiwon held his 2 fingers with absolute conviction. The negotiation had concluded. The terms had been set. Leah appeared at the top of the stairs in her school uniform with her school bag on her back and looked down at the scene in the entrance hall with the expression of someone who had seen this exact negotiation before and had opinions about the outcome. "He does this every time," she said to nobody in particular. "He gets it from your mother," Siwan said. "I am standing right here," Linda said. "I know," Siwan said. He looked at her over Jiwon's head with that expression that had always been only ever for her. Warm and direct and entirely unhurried. Linda looked back at him. Jiwon, sensing that the attention had shifted, away from his protest, climbed off the suitcase with dignity and walked to his mother. Linda picked him up. He put both arms around her neck and looked at his father with the expression of someone who had made their point and was satisfied with the outcome. Siwan stood, crossed the entrance hall, stopped in front of Linda. He reached out and touched her face, looked at her face the way he always did, completely, like he was filing it away for somewhere he was going where he would need it. 5 days, he said quietly. 2, Jiwon said from Linda's arms. Linda pressed her lips together very firmly. Siwan looked at his son, then at his wife. Then he picked up his suitcase and walked toward the door where his security was waiting. "I'll call when I land," he said. "We'll be here," Linda said. He looked back once, then he was gone. Linda stood at the door with Jiwon on her hip watching the convoy pull out of the estate gates. Leah came and stood beside her. They watched until the last car disappeared. "He'll be back in 5 days," Leah said. 4, Linda said. Leah looked up at her. "If I have anything to say about it," Linda said. Leah smiled, the small private one she saved for things that were too good for her face to contain all at once. Jiwon waved at the empty gate. The estate was different when Siwan was away. Not empty. It was never empty with Jiwon in it, a child who had inherited his mother's energy and his father's conviction and combined them into something that kept Mrs. O in a permanent state of professional vigilance. But different, quieter in the spaces that were usually his. Linda noticed it every time. The breakfast table without him at the head of it. The study door closed with nobody inside. The particular absence of a tall man moving through rooms with that unhurried certainty. She did not say any of this out loud. Instead, she picked Leah up from school on the second day in a cream-wrap dress and gold accessories, with Jiwon in the back seat singing something that was not quite a song, but was delivered with considerable conviction, looking out the window with his father's expression, observing everything and commenting on nothing. Leah got into the car, dropped her school bag, looked at Jiwon with the focused affection she reserved entirely for him, and said, "He's been singing again." "Since this morning," Linda confirmed. "What is it?" "Nobody knows," Linda said, "including him." Jiwon sang louder, aware he was being discussed and choosing to respond with a performance. Leah turned around and looked at her brother. He stopped singing immediately. He looked back at her with Siwon's exact expression, composed, assessing, giving nothing away. Then he held out his hand toward her, not reaching desperately, just extending it, certain she would take it. Leah took it. "He does that every time," Linda said softly. "I know," Leah said, looking at him, expression completely unguarded and warm. "He has always done that." Linda watched them in the rearview mirror for a moment, then she started the car. That afternoon they went to a cafe near Leah's school, the kind with mismatched chairs and good pat bingsu and windows that looked out onto a street busy enough to watch but quiet enough to talk in. Leah ordered for both of them without being asked. Jiwon got a small cup of something cold that he regarded with deep suspicion, before deciding it was acceptable and consuming it with great focus. They sat by the window, Jiwon beside them at the table, Leah with her hands wrapped around her drink looking out at the street, with that expression she got when she was thinking about something she hadn't decided yet whether to say. Linda waited. This was something she had learned about Leah over 3 years. You did not pull things out of her. You created the conditions and you waited. She would arrive in her own time. "There is a girl in my class," Leah said finally. "Her name is Sujin. She told everyone that my mother is not my real mother." Linda looked at her. "I told her that real is not about biology," Leah said. "It is about who shows up." She paused. She did not have a response to that. Linda sat with that for a moment, with this 12-year-old girl who had just casually and completely dismantled a classmate's argument with the precision of someone twice her age. "What did your teacher say?" Linda asked. "She wasn't there," Leah said. "I handled it." "I see," Linda said. "I also told Sujin," Leah continued, "that my mother will pick me up from school today in a cream dress and gold earrings and drives a car that costs more than her entire family's apartment building." She paused. "I did not say that last part out loud, but I thought it very clearly in her direction." Linda looked at her. "Leah," she said. "Yes," Leah said pleasantly. "Thank you," Linda said, "for the first part." "You're welcome," Leah said. She picked up her drink. "She was wrong anyway. You are more real than anyone, Mom." Linda looked at her daughter, at this composed, perceptive, fierce 12-year-old who had just sat in a cafe and had told a classmate exactly what real meant. She reached across the table and squeezed Leah's hand once. Leah looked at their hands, then at Linda. Then she looked back out the window with that small, private smile. Jiwon set his cup down deliberately on the table and looked at Linda's pat bingsu. Both of them looked at him. "I want," he said, simply, like the matter was already settled. "No," Linda said. He looked at her, then at the pat bingsu, then back at her. "I want," he said again, with more conviction. "That is my food, Jiwon," Linda said. He looked at her with Siwon's exact expression. The one that said, "I have considered your position and I disagree." Leah started laughing. Linda gave Jiwon her spoon. That evening, Linda sat on the bedroom floor with her back against the bed and her phone in her hand. Jiwon was asleep. Leah was in her room. The estate was quiet. She looked at the pictures she had taken that afternoon. Leah and Jiwon at the cafe window. Jiwon with pat bingsu on his face looking profoundly satisfied. Leah pretending not to smile at something Jiwon had done. The three of them in the car park after, Jiwon on Linda's hip reaching for Leah's hair with absolute determination, while Leah leaned away with great dignity. She sent them all to Siwon. His response came in 4 minutes, which meant he had not been in a meeting. "He has your determination." Linda typed back. "He has your face when he doesn't get what he wants." 3 minutes. "That is not my face." Linda smiled at her phone. It is exactly your face. I have seen it across a breakfast table many times. 2 minutes this time. Send me a picture of you. Linda looked at her phone for a moment, then she stood up, walked to the mirror, fixed her hair, looked at herself for a long moment, the cream dress still on, gold earrings catching the light, the particular expression of a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. She took the picture, sent it. 40 seconds. I'm coming home early. Linda sat back down on the floor and laughed quietly so she didn't wake Jiwon. You have meetings. 20 seconds. I have a wife. She sat with her phone in her hand and felt something so warm move through her chest that she pressed her hand against it just to feel it properly. 4 days Saiwan, 10 seconds, 2. She looked at the screen, then she typed, Jiwon says 2, you say 5. You are now agreeing with a 2-year-old. 5 seconds, he has always had good judgment. Linda put her phone down on the floor beside her and looked at the ceiling of the bedroom that had started as a guest room and had become the only bedroom she wanted to sleep in. Outside, Seoul moved through its evening. Inside the estate, everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. She picked the phone back up, took another picture. This time, she was not looking at the mirror. She sent it before she could think about it. This time, Siwon's response came in 15 seconds. It was not words. It was a flight itinerary. He had moved his meetings, all of them, handed everything to his assistant. He was getting on a plane in 3 hours. Linda sat on the bedroom floor with his flight itinerary on her phone and pressed both hands over her face. Then she got up, went to Leah's room, knocked twice, and opened the door. Leah was reading. She looked up. Your father is coming home tomorrow morning, Linda said. Leah looked at her, then at Linda's expression, then back to her book. I see, she said, with enormous composure. I just thought you should know, Linda said. Thank you for informing me, Leah said, still looking at her book, a small smile at the corner of her mouth. Good night, Mom. Not Linda. She had called her Linda for months, but the day Siwon put a ring on her mother's finger, Leah had quietly and without announcement retired that name entirely. Mom. Linda closed the door, stood in the corridor, and smiled at the wall for a moment before going back to her room. He arrived at 6 a.m. The estate was still quiet. Mrs. O was in the kitchen. Jiwon was asleep. Leah was getting ready for school. Linda was at the kitchen counter with her coffee when she heard the gate. She did not go to the door immediately. She finished her coffee, set the mug down, smoothed her robe, then she went. He was standing in the entrance hall in his travel clothes, dark shirt, dark trousers, no jacket, slightly jet-lagged, carrying nothing except his phone and the particular certainty of a man who had gotten on a plane at midnight because he had looked at a picture and decided that whatever was on the other side of it was more important than anything else on his schedule. He looked at her. She looked at him. You moved your meetings, she said. Yes, he said. All of them. Yes. For a picture, she said. He looked at her with that expression, the one that lived underneath everything else and was only ever for her. For you, he said simply, not the picture. Linda looked at him for a long moment. Then she crossed the entrance hall and he met her halfway, and his arms came around her, and she felt the particular exhale of someone who had been holding something for 4 days and had finally put it down. They stood like that in the entrance hall while Seoul woke up outside the estate walls, and Mrs. O pretended to be very busy with something in the kitchen, and absolutely nothing else in the world required either of their attention. You smell like a plane, Linda said into his shoulder. I know, he said. It's not ideal, she said. I'll shower, he said, not moving. Okay, she said. Also not moving. They stayed exactly where they were, until Jiwon's voice came from upstairs. Not words exactly, just the particular sound of a 4-year-old who had woken up and was conducting a survey of who was in the building and expected a response. Siwon pulled back, looked at Linda's face for a moment. Then he went upstairs. Linda stood in the entrance hall and listened to the exact moment Jiwon realized his father was home. The sound that followed was not quite a word and not quite a scream, but contained within it the complete and total joy of someone whose world had just become exactly right. She went to pick up her coffee mug from where she had left it and smiled at it for a moment before going upstairs. The next 3 days were the particular kind of ordinary that felt extraordinary only because it was theirs. Siwon took Jiwon to the park on Saturday morning and came back with grass stains on his suit trousers and the expression of a man who had no regrets about this whatsoever. Linda took one look at the trousers, looked at Siwon's face, and said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. Leah finished a school project that she had been working on for 3 weeks and presented it at the dinner table on Sunday evening with the focused energy of a closing argument. It was about economic inequality. She was 12. Siwon listened to the entire thing without interrupting. When she finished, he asked 2 questions. Leah answered both with the precision of someone who had anticipated them. He nodded once. "Good," he said. Leah received this with the satisfaction of someone who had wanted exactly that and nothing more. Linda watched them across the dinner table and said nothing. This was his turn. A father assessing his daughter, quietly, thoroughly, the way Siwon did everything. Asking the right questions, finding the gaps, pushing where pushing was needed. Linda had her role with Leah, and Siwon had his, and they had never needed to discuss where one ended and the other began. She picked up her glass, smiled at it, privately. On Monday morning, Siwon left for the second leg of his business trip. This time, Jiwon did not sit on the suitcase. He stood beside it, hand on the handle, looking at his father with Siwon's own expression. 3 days, Jiwon said. Clearly, precisely. Everyone in the entrance hall went still, not because it was the most words he had said, but because of how he said them. Like a verdict, like a man who had considered the matter thoroughly and was not open to further discussion. Siwon crouched down and looked at his son for a long moment. Something moved through his face, that private, complete expression that only ever came out for the people in this house. 3 days, he agreed. Jiwon removed his hand from the suitcase handle, stepped back, satisfied. Leah, standing at the top of the stairs, looked at Linda. Linda looked at Leah. Neither of them said anything, because some things didn't need words. He had been gone for 2 days when the envelope arrived, not through the post, delivered, by hand, to the estate gate, addressed to Linda specifically, her full name, her married name. Mrs. O brought it to her in the sitting room where Linda was going through business correspondence with her laptop open and her reading glasses on and Jiwon asleep upstairs. Linda looked at the envelope, at her name on the front, at the absence of any return address. She opened it. Inside were 3 photographs. She looked at the first one, then the second, then the third. She set them down on the coffee table in front of her very carefully. The way you set something down when your hands have started doing something you don't want them to do. She sat there for a long moment. Outside the sitting room window, Seoul was doing its afternoon things entirely unaware that Linda Perro, John, had just looked at 3 photographs that had rearranged something fundamental inside her chest. She picked up her phone, looked at Siwon's name, put it down, picked it up again, put it down. She took off her reading glasses, folded them, set them beside the photographs. Then she picked up her laptop and went back to her correspondence. Because Linda Perro did not fall apart, she organized, she managed, she waited. He came home on Thursday evening. She was in the kitchen when he arrived. Dinner on the table, Jiwon in his chair at the table. Leah across from him explaining something about photosynthesis that Jiwon was listening to with the focused attention of someone who understood none of it and found it deeply compelling anyway. Siwon came in, set his bag down, the normal sounds of him returning, the gate, the door, the particular way he moved through the house. Jiwon looked up. 3 days, he said, approvingly. 3 days, Siwon confirmed. He looked at Linda. She looked at him. She smiled. It was the right shape. It had all the correct components. It reached her eyes, but Siwon, who had been reading this woman's face for 4 years, looked at her for 1 extra second. Then he sat down. Dinner was normal. Leah talked about school. Jiwon ate with dedication. Siwon asked the right questions. Linda answered the right things. Everything was exactly right, which was how Siwon knew something was wrong. He found her in the sitting room after the children were in bed. She was reading, or doing something that looked like reading. He sat beside her. She did not look up immediately. "How was the rest of the trip?" she said, to her book. "Fine," he said, watching her. "The deal?" "Closed," he said. "Good," she said. He sat beside her for a moment, in the quiet that had always been comfortable between them and was tonight something else entirely. "Linda," he said. "I'm tired," she said. "I think I'll go up." She closed her book, stood up, looked at him once. That smile again, exactly right, all the correct components, and went upstairs. Siwon sat in the sitting room alone. He looked at the space where she had been sitting. Something had happened. He did not know what yet, but he knew Linda Perro, and the woman who had just left this room was not the woman who had sent him a flight itinerary worth of pictures 6 days ago. Something had happened. He sat in the sitting room for a long time after that, the estate quiet around him, soul outside the walls, the particular silence of a man who was already beginning to calculate. He tried on Friday evening. He had spoken to the estate manager in the afternoon, arranged dinner, not at the estate, outside, a restaurant Linda had mentioned once in passing 3 months ago, and he had noted and filed because that was what he did with things that mattered. He told her at 4 o'clock. She looked at him. "Tonight?" "Yes," he said. "Leah has a school thing," she said. "Mrs. O will be here," he said. A pause. "G1. We'll be fine for 2 hours," he said, quietly, directly. "Linda." She looked at him for a moment. Something moved through her face that she controlled before he could read it fully. "Okay," she said. They went. The restaurant was everything he had intended it to be. Quiet, beautiful, the kind of place that required nothing of you except to be present. Linda was present. She was perfectly present. She asked about the trip. She talked about the business. She laughed at something the waiter said. She was there in every technical sense of the word, and completely unreachable. Siwon sat across the table from his wife and felt the particular frustration of a man who could see exactly what was happening and could not find the door. On the way home in the car, he said quietly, "I missed you." "I'm here," she said, looking out the window. "I know," he said. "That's not what I mean." She said nothing. He did not push, but his jaw was set for the rest of the drive home in a way that had nothing to do with traffic. It was Saturday evening, when it happened. The children were in bed. The estate was quiet. Linda was in the bedroom standing at the window looking at the Seoul night skyline when Siwon came in. He crossed the room, stopped behind her, close. She turned. He looked at her face for a moment. Then he reached out slowly and his hand found her face the way it always had, completely, deliberately, like it had already decided this was where it belonged. She let him. He kissed her, gently at first. Then she felt his hand move from her face to her waist and pull her closer, and it stopped being gentle entirely. And for a moment, for one long moment, she was there, completely there. The woman who had sent pictures from a bedroom floor and laughed at a flight itinerary and stood in an entrance hall and not moved for a very long time. Then she pulled back. Siwon stilled. She stepped back. One step, her expression doing something complicated that she controlled before it finished. "I'm sorry," he said, immediately, quietly. "I just missed you." "Don't," she said. "Don't apologize. It's not that." She looked at him for a moment, something moving through her face that she had been holding for 5 days and was now too close to the surface to push back down. "Linda, are you cheating on me?" The room went very still. Siwon looked at her, his expression, usually so composed, doing something she had not seen on it before. Something between pain and something harder. "No," he said. "Then what is this?" She crossed to the bedside table, opened the drawer, took out the envelope, walked back and set it on the windowsill between them. He looked at it. She watched his face. He picked it up, took out the photographs, looked at them. 1, 2, 3. His expression did not change, which was its own kind of answer. Not surprise, not confusion, just recognition. And underneath the recognition, something cold and controlled settling into place. He set the photographs, the high, down, said nothing. "Siwon," she said. He looked at her. "I need to make a call," he said. "That's what you have to say to me?" Her voice was completely level, which meant it was costing her considerably. "Linda. Who is she?" A pause. "Someone I went to school with." "School," she repeated. "Yes." "How long have you known her?" "Since we were teenagers," he said. The room was very quiet. And those photographs? He said nothing. Siwan. I need 2 days, he said. 2 days, she repeated. That's all I'm asking. She looked at him, at the photographs, at his face which was giving her nothing. No explanation, no denial, no reassurance, just 2 days. A man with nothing to hide would have said something, would have explained, would have been angry at the accusation. John Siwan was standing in front of her saying nothing. 2 days, she said, quietly, like a door closing. He nodded once, picked up the photographs, put them back in the envelope, and went to his study. The door closed. Linda stood in the bedroom alone. She looked at the windowsill, at the space where the envelope had been. She stood at the window and looked at Seoul doing its Saturday night things, entirely unaware that something had shifted in this bedroom in a way that might not shift back. The 2 days passed, then 3, then 5. Siwan came out of the study for meals, for the children. He was present for Jiwon and Leah in every way that mattered. Bath time, breakfast, Leah's school pickup on Wednesday when Linda had a client meeting. He was doing everything right. Everything except saying the one thing she needed to hear. Linda watched him across the breakfast table on the 6th morning and felt the particular cold of someone who has been told 2 days and is now on day 6 and has stopped counting because counting had become its own kind of pain. She did not ask again. She had asked once. That was enough. Linda Perro did not ask twice. She went to work. She came home. She was warm with Leah. She was present for Jiwon. She slept on her side of the bed in the particular stillness of someone who has made a decision and is waiting for the right moment to take action. Siwan slept on his side. The space between them in the bed was not large. It had never felt larger. Leah noticed on the 8th day. She did not say anything. She was 12 and perceptive, and the daughter of a man who processed alone and a woman who managed alone, and she had inherited both of their self-containment in equal measure. But Linda saw her noticing. At breakfast, the way Leah's eyes moved between them. At dinner, the way she talked a little more than usual, filling the spaces that used to fill themselves. At bedtime, the way she stopped at the master suite doorway for a moment before saying goodnight. Just a moment, just long enough. Linda managed it the way she managed everything. She was warm, she was present, she was Linda. After Leah's good night on the 8th evening, Linda went to her room and sat with her. They talked about school, about a documentary Leah had watched and had opinions about something that had happened in class that week that Leah found intellectually irritating and wanted to discuss thoroughly. Linda listened and asked questions and laughed at the right parts. 40 minutes of nothing important and everything important simultaneously. When she got up to leave, Leah said, "Good night, Mom." Linda stood in the doorway for a moment. "Good night, baby," she said. She closed the door, stood in the corridor, and held herself very carefully together for approximately 30 seconds before going back to the master's suite. It was in the middle of all of this that Linda and Leah decided that Cynthia needed a love life. It started, as most things with Leah started, with an observation delivered at the breakfast table with the casualness of a grenade. "Cynthia has been single for 3 years," Leah said, over her rice. Linda looked up from her coffee. "I counted," Leah said. "That is not your business to count," Linda said. "Someone has to," Leah said. "She clearly isn't." She picked up her chopsticks. Mr. Beck asked about her again. Linda put her coffee down. "What do you mean again?" "He asked Father about her at the charity dinner in February," Leah said, "and at the product launch in March, and last week when he came for the meeting, he asked Mrs. O if Cynthia was visiting soon." She paused. "Mrs. O told me. She found it notable." Linda sat with this information. Park Baek, Siwan's business associate, 40 years old, quiet, composed, successful, the kind of man who asked about someone 3 times before anyone noticed he was asking. "Leah," Linda said carefully. "I'm just reporting facts," Leah said, with complete innocence. "You're 12, Linda said. "Facts do not have an age requirement," Leah said. Linda looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone. It took 2 weeks, one carefully orchestrated dinner invitation, and Leah's suggestion that the seating arrangement be reconsidered at the last minute to put Cynthia and Park Baek beside each other at the table. Cynthia arrived in a red dress and sunglasses even though it was evening and looked at the seating arrangement and looked at Linda and said, This is a setup. It's a dinner, Linda said. Linda. Sit down, Cynthia, Linda said. Cynthia sat down. Park Baek arrived 7 minutes later in a dark suit and the particular composure of a man who had asked about someone 3 times in 6 months, and had been told she would be at this dinner, and had been thinking about what to say since Tuesday. He shook Siwon's hand, greeted Linda, looked at Leah with the respectful wariness of someone who had been warned. Then he looked at Cynthia. Cynthia looked back at him. Leah, sitting across the table, looked at her rice with great concentration. Linda looked at the ceiling. Siwon looked at nobody and said nothing, which was his contribution to the proceedings. By the end of dinner, Cynthia had talked more than she usually talked, and Park Baek had listened with the focused, complete attention of a man who had been waiting to be in this exact conversation and was not wasting a second of it. When he offered to drive her back to her hotel, Cynthia said, "I have a driver." Park Baek said, "I know, I'm asking anyway." Cynthia looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Linda across the table. Linda was suddenly very interested in her dessert. "Fine," Cynthia said. Leah, still looking at her rice, allowed herself the smallest smile. You just watched Linda and her 12-year-old daughter engineer Cynthia's entire love life in the middle of a marriage that is quietly falling apart. That is called functioning. That is called Linda Pero. Drop a comment and tell us, did you notice what Leah did with that seating arrangement? Because we see you, Leah. We have always seen you. Subscribe if you haven't. Because what happens next in this house is going to cost you something. Back to the story. It was Cynthia who came to the estate 2 days later. She arrived unannounced the way she always did. Turquoise dress, designer bag, sunglasses, the energy of someone who had something to say and had been composing it in the car. She found Linda in the sitting room going through fabric samples for a new collection. She sat down across from her, looked at her. Linda looked back. "You look tired," Cynthia said. "I'm fine," Linda said. "I didn't ask if you were fine," Cynthia said. "I said you looked tired." Linda picked up a fabric sample, held it to the light. Cynthia watched her for a moment. Then she leaned back and said, "Do you know what I was thinking about on the way here?" "What?" Linda said. "How lucky you are," Cynthia said. "I was sitting in that car, thinking about you and Siwon and those children in this house, and I was thinking, Linda has everything. She really has everything." She shook her head. "A man who flew 21 hours to stand in your city, a man who wrote a document about salt, a man who canceled 2 weeks of meetings because you sent him a picture." She looked at Linda. "Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how many women would—" Linda put the fabric sample down. Cynthia stopped, because Linda's hands were not steady. She was not crying. Linda Pero did not cry easily, and never in front of people if she could help it. But her hands were not steady, and her jaw was set in the particular way of someone who is holding something very large in a very small space, and has been holding it for 2 weeks and is running out of room. "Linda," Cynthia said, quietly, all the brightness gone from her voice. "I'm fine," Linda said. "You are not fine," Cynthia said. "Cynthia, look at me," Cynthia said, when he looked at her. Cynthia looked back at her best friend, at the woman who had gone undercover in a soul estate and come back with a husband and 2 children, and a life that looked from the outside like everything anyone could want. And who was sitting in that life right now with unsteady hands and a jaw set like a closed door. "Is someone hurting you?" Cynthia said, very quietly. "No," Linda said. "Did Siwon—" "No," Linda said, immediately, firmly. "Then what?" Cynthia said. "Tell me." Linda looked at her for a long moment. "It's okay," she said. Cynthia stared at her. "It's okay, Cynthia," Linda said again, her voice completely level, her hands still not entirely steady. "I'm handling it." Cynthia sat across from her best friend and looked at those 2 words, "I'm handling it," and recognized them for what they were. Not reassurance, not truth. Just Linda Pero doing the thing she had always done, taking the weight, managing alone, organizing in the dark. "You don't have to handle everything alone," Cynthia said. "I know," Linda said. "Do you?" Cynthia said. Linda picked up the fabric sample again, held it to the light. Cynthia sat back. She did not push further, because she knew Linda, and Linda would not be pushed. She would only be waited for. But she stayed for 4 hours. She stayed through lunch and through Jiwon's afternoon chaos, and through Leah coming home from school, and through all of it. She stayed the way you stay when someone has said it's okay, and you know it isn't, and you want them to know you are not going anywhere. When she left, she hugged Linda for a long time at the door. Linda let her, which from Linda was everything. Siwon found Leah on a Thursday evening. She was in her room, book open, actually reading this time. He could tell the difference. He knocked. She looked up. He came in, sat in the chair by her desk. She put her book down and looked at him with those eyes that had always seen too much. He looked back at her for a moment. "You've noticed," he said. It was not a question. "Yes," she said, simply. He nodded slowly. "I want you to know something," he said. "Whatever is happening between your mother and me, it has nothing to do with you, and it has nothing to do with Jiwon." Leah said nothing, listening. "We love you," he said, quietly, with the directness he used for things that were too important for any other delivery. "Nothing that happens between your mother and me changes that. I am not going anywhere. She is not going anywhere. This family is not breaking. I need you to know that." "I know," she said. "School," he said. "Focus on school. Don't carry this." "I'm not carrying it," she said. He looked at her. "I'm holding it," she said. "There's a difference. Carrying means it's weighing me down. Holding means I'm choosing to be aware of it." A pause. "I'm aware of it, but I'm fine." Siwon looked at his daughter, at this 12-year-old, who had just drawn a distinction between carrying and holding with the precision of a philosopher and the composure of someone 3 times her age. Something moved through his face, that private wrecked expression that only ever came out for the people in this house. "Your mother and I are not going anywhere," he said. "I need you to know that, Leah, not as something I am saying, as something I mean." Leah looked at him for a long moment, those perceptive ancient eyes reading his face the way she had always read everything, completely, finding what was there, finding what wasn't. "I know," she said, and she meant it, not because she was choosing to believe it, but because she had read his face and found it there. She picked her book back up. He sat with her for another few minutes without speaking. Then he got up. At the door he stopped. "Dad," Leah said, without looking up from her book. He waited. "Fix it," she said. He looked at the back of her head, at his daughter, reading her book with that complete focused calm. "I'm working on it," he said. "Work faster," she said. He left. In the corridor outside her room, Jean Siwon, the most feared man in Seoul, stood for a moment with his hand still on the doorframe. Then he went back to his study and worked faster. That evening, Linda came home at 10. The estate was quiet. Jiwon was asleep. Leah was in her room. Mrs. O had left a light on in the entrance hall. Siwon was in the sitting room, not working, not on his phone, just sitting. He looked up when she came in and something moved through his face that he didn't fully manage in time. Relief. And underneath the relief, something that looked very close to desperate. The sitting room was quiet. Siwon looked at her. She looked back at him. The same silence that had been living in this house for days sitting between them unchanged. "How was work?" he said. Finally. "Fine," she said. He nodded once, then stood up, crossed the room, stopped, in front of her. "Talk to me," he said, quietly, "please." Linda looked up at him, at this man who never said please, who had built his entire life around never needing to, standing in his own entrance hall, saying please to his wife because it was the only thing he had left. "I'm tired, Siwon," she said. He reached out and took her hand, held it. "I know," he said. "I know you're tired. I know I did this. Just—" He stopped, swallowed. "Don't go upstairs, not yet. Just sit with me, that's all I'm asking." Linda looked at their hands, at his hand holding hers the way it always had, completely, like it had already decided this was where it belonged. She looked at his face, then she gently removed her hand from his. "Good night, Siwon," she said. She turned toward the stairs, one step, then another. He watched her go, that particular stillness of a man who has run out of words and knows it. His hand still open at his side, Then something stopped him. Something he had been carrying quietly for days without knowing what to do with it. Linda. She stopped, hand on the banister, not turning around. Are you pregnant? The entrance hall went completely silent. She stood there for a moment, her back to him, her hand on the banister, not moving. Then she went upstairs without a word. He stood in the entrance hall alone, the lights still on, the house completely quiet around him. The next morning, Linda placed the document on his desk, printed, official, from a lawyer whose name she had found herself, called herself, instructed herself. Because that was what Linda Perro did. She did not wait. She did not do things. She made decisions and she acted on them. She placed it on his desk when he was at breakfast with the children. She did not tell him it was there. She went to her office, sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and did not look at her phone for the rest of the morning. Leah went to her father's study after breakfast while he played with Jiwon. She had forgotten her history textbook on his desk the day before. She pushed the door open. The document was there, a divorce petition, her mother's name, her father's name, official, printed. She picked it up, read the words at the top. She stood there for a moment. 12 years old, completely still. Her father could never see this, because if he did, it would tell him exactly how far things had gone between him and her mother. And that knowledge, that Linda had already reached the point of lawyers and documents and finality, would break something in him, destabilize everything he was. A man who had survived things that would destroy most people, but not this. Never this. He won't survive this one, that she knows. Losing Linda this way would not just hurt him. It would take something from him that would never come back. And it would take something from her, too. Something she had waited her whole childhood for without knowing she was waiting. Mother who had chosen her. A family that was whole. She was not going to watch it end in a document on a desk. Leah was not going to let that happen. Then she tore it. Once, twice, again and again until there was nothing left to tear. She gathered every piece off the desk carefully, walked to the bin in the corner, dropped them in, she straightened her uniform, and walked back out, closing the door quietly behind her, as if she had never been there. But that was the day Leah buried a secret that would follow her family for years. Siwon came to Linda on a Sunday, 18 days after the photographs, 16 days after the 2 days he had asked for, 2 days after she had placed something on his desk that he did not know about and would never know about because a 12-year-old girl had decided it with both hands. He came to her in the sitting room, sat across from her, set a folder on the coffee table between them. She looked at it. Open it, he said. She did. Inside was everything. Documented, organized, thorough, the way John Siwon did everything. The photographs traced to their origin. A private photographer hired specifically. Payment traced to an account connected to a man named Han Jae-won. The woman in the photographs, his school friend Kim Sua. Her marriage to Han Jae-won documented. His business dealings documented. His loss of the Meridian contract, the major deal, to Siwon's company documented. The timeline, the motive, all of it. Linda read through it slowly. Siwon sat across from her and waited. She turned the last page, looked at it, set the folder down. He used his own wife, she said. Yes, Siwon said. She didn't know the full extent of it, he said. She knew him. She knew what he was capable of. When he told her to have lunch with me publicly, she didn't ask questions. She didn't know there was a photographer positioned to make it look like something it wasn't. He paused. Han Jae-won lost the Meridian contract to me. It was the biggest deal of his career. It destroyed his standing, his reputation, everything he had spent years building. He looked at Linda steadily. He could not come at me through business, so he came at me through you. He knew that I can survive losing a deal. He calculated correctly that I would not survive losing my family. So he sent those photographs to you specifically, not to me, to you, because you were the target, not me. Linda sat with that for a moment, with the full weight of what it meant, that someone had studied her husband carefully enough to know exactly where he was most vulnerable, and had aimed there without hesitation. Linda looked at him. You had lunch with a woman and didn't tell me. Yes, he said. Why? He was quiet for a moment. She called me 2 days before I came home on my first trip. She said she needed to speak to me about something concerning her husband's business dealings with mine. I agreed to meet her. It was 1 hour, a public restaurant. I did not think it was significant enough to mention. You did not think? Linda stopped. A woman, lunch. You did not think it was significant enough to mention to your wife? No, he said. That was a mistake. Yes, Linda said. It was. He held her gaze. I own that. Linda sat with that, with the image of a woman in a bad marriage being positioned and used without full knowledge, as a weapon against someone else's good one. Is she safe? Linda asked. Siwan looked at her. Something moved through his face. Yes, he said. I made sure of it. Linda looked at the folder on the coffee table. You should have told me, she said. I know, he said. You should have told me about the lunch when it happened, she said. And the moment you saw those photographs, you should have told me immediately what you suspected, not asked me for 2 days and then disappeared for weeks. I found out about the lunch and the photographs at the same time, from an envelope delivered to my door by a stranger. I know, he said again, not defending, not explaining, just receiving it. Because she was right. Instead you went silent, she said. And She stopped. I know what you thought, he said quietly. Then you know why She stopped again. Yes, he said. They sat with that for a moment, with everything that had happened in 3 weeks in the space between two people who loved each other and had both, in their own ways, handled it alone instead of together. I am not good at asking for help, he said finally. I investigate, I fix, I protect. That is what I do. I did not think about what my silence looked like from where you were standing. Linda looked at him. And I did not ask again after the first time, she said, because Linda Perro does not ask twice, which meant I made a decision without all the information. He looked at her. What decision? She looked at the folder, then at him. It doesn't matter now, she said. He looked at her face for a long moment, reading it the way he always did, finding what was there. He found something, but he did not ask. Instead, he reached across the coffee table and took her hand, held it, said nothing for a moment. I need you to talk to me, he said finally, quietly. When something is wrong, when you are uncertain, when you are... He paused. When you are building an exit. I need you to talk to me first. He held her gaze. It destabilizes me, not knowing where you are, not being able to reach you. I could not concentrate on the investigation. I could not concentrate on anything, because you were right there and completely unreachable, and that is the only thing that has ever undone me. Linda looked at him. I know I didn't tell you about the lunch, he said. I know I went silent after the photographs. I know that cost you. Both of those were my failures, and I own them completely. He held her hand steady. But talk to me. Whatever it is, talk to me. Linda looked at their hands, at the folder on the coffee table, at this man who had traced photographs through shell companies and payment accounts and produced a documented case in 3 weeks, because that was how he protected the people he loved, alone, thoroughly, without being asked. You are impossible, she said. You are here, he said. Simply, like that answered everything. Because for him it did. She looked at him for a long moment, then she moved from her chair to the sofa beside him. He put his arm around her. She leaned in, that honest, unself-conscious lean that meant she had run out of the energy required to be anywhere except exactly here. They sat in the sitting room while Sol moved through it Sunday outside, and somewhere upstairs Ji-won was having a conversation with himself, and Leah was reading and Mrs. O was doing something in the kitchen that smelled extraordinary. After a long time, Siwon said quietly into her hair, I don't share. I want you to know that, not because I am telling you something you don't know, but because I want to say it out loud so it is between us directly. He paused. I have never cheated on you. I will never cheat on you. Not with her, not with anyone, not from the past, not from business. Nobody is exempted from that. Ever. A pause. I would not survive you leaving Linda. I would not want to survive it. So understand that I have no interest in doing anything that risks it. He looked at her steadily. And I trust that you understand what that means for both of us. This is not one-sided. What is mine, and what is yours. We do not share, either of us. I have told you this before. It has not changed. It will not change. I promise. Linda sat beside him and felt those words land in the particular place words land when they are completely true and completely meant. "I know," she said. "I know you know," he said. "I needed to say it anyway." She looked up at him. He looked down at her. She was quiet for a moment. "I'm pregnant," she said. He looked at her, not entirely surprised. Something had made him ask her that night on the stairs. He could not have explained it if pressed. He had just known, the way he always knew things about her before she said them. And now that she had said it, what he felt was just relief, that it was finally between them directly. "When did you find out?" he said. She looked at him. "The morning of that night," she said. He held her gaze for a moment, taking that in. The same day she found out she was carrying his child was the same night he had asked her. Something moved through his face. Then he pulled her in without another word, both arms, all the way. She let him, and somewhere between the looking and the saying nothing and the particular warmth of a Sunday afternoon in a sitting room that had seen considerable things, they found each other again, the way you find something you never actually lost, just temporarily couldn't locate in the dark. Cynthia called that evening. "Park Bayek took me to Jeju," she said the moment Linda picked up. No greeting, no hello. "Jeju," Linda repeated. "For the weekend. He asked on Wednesday. I said no. He said okay. Then on Friday I called him and said yes." A pause that was slightly too short to be genuinely casual. "It was very nice." "Very nice," Linda repeated. "The weather was good." "Cynthia." He held my hand on the beach. Very quickly, without asking, he just took it, like it had already been decided. Linda sat with her phone and felt a warmth move through her chest. And I let him. Like this was an extraordinary admission, which from Cynthia it was. I let him and I didn't say anything about it, and we walked for 45 minutes and I talked the entire time, and he listened to every single word. The entire time. Every word. Linda, he asked follow-up questions about things I said 20 minutes earlier. He was paying attention. Cynthia. "I know." Quietly. Just that. "I know, don't say it." "I wasn't going to say anything." "You were going to say I told you so." "I was going to say I'm happy for you." A pause. "Oh. Yeah." They stayed on the phone saying nothing for a moment. The comfortable silence of two women who had been friends long enough to not need to fill every space. "How are you?" Carefully, meaning more than the words. "Better." Meaning it. "Good." Simply, not pushing, not asking, just receiving it and being glad. Good. Park Bayek was, as Leah had assessed from the available data, thorough. He called when he said he would call. He arrived when he said he would arrive. He remembered things, small things, the kind of things that required actual attention to know. Cynthia had 4 previous relationships that had ended in 4 different ways, none of which she discussed in detail with anyone except Linda, but all of which had left her with a very specific and carefully maintained distance from the idea of trying again. Park Bayek did not try to cross the distance. He just stood at it, consistently, patiently, with the particular composure of a man who had decided something and was not in a hurry about it because he was certain about it, and certainty did not require urgency. By the 4th month, Cynthia had stopped maintaining the distance. She had not announced this. She had not discussed it. She had simply stopped. Leah, who had been monitoring the situation with the focused interest of someone who had engineered it and felt a degree of responsibility for its outcome, reported to Linda at breakfast one morning. "She called him first yesterday, 3 times. "How do you know that?" "She told Mrs. O. Mrs. O told me." "Mrs. O should not be." "Mrs. O is invested. We all are." Linda looked at her daughter, at this 12-year-old who had matched her mother's best friend with a man she had identified through observation alone and was now monitoring the relationship's progress through a network of information that apparently included the head housekeeper. Leah. "Yes," pleasantly. "Well done." Leah received this with considerable satisfaction. Park Bayek proposed on a Saturday evening, not a special Saturday, just a Saturday. He had, according to Cynthia's account delivered to Linda at considerable volume and speed over the phone, simply looked at her across a dinner table and said that he wanted to marry her and that he had thought about it thoroughly and was certain and that she could take whatever time she needed, but he wanted her to know where he was. Cynthia had said, I need to call Linda. Park Beck had said, I know, use my phone. Yours is in your bag. She had called Linda from Park Beck's phone at 9 p.m. on a Saturday. He asked me. Linda sat up straight in bed. Beside her, Siwan did not look up from his phone, but his expression shifted slightly in the way that meant he was listening. What did you say? I said I needed to call you. Cynthia. I said yes. Very quickly then. I said yes, Linda. Before I called you, I said yes, and then I said I needed to call Linda, and he handed me his phone. Linda pressed her hand over her mouth. Are you crying? No. With eyes that were doing considerable work. You're crying. I am not. You cried at your own wedding less than this. I did not. Linda. Congratulations, Cynthia. Properly, warmly, with everything it meant. A pause. Thank you. Quietly, plain and complete. Thank you for the dinner and the seating arrangement. A pause. And Leah, thank Leah. She'll be insufferable about it. She deserves to be. Linda laughed. Cynthia laughed. They stayed on the phone saying nothing for another minute. Then Cynthia went back to Park Beck. Linda put the phone down. Siwan beside her, still looking at his phone. She said yes. Yes. Good. Linda looked at the side of his face. Did you know he was, going to ask? A pause that was slightly too short. Siwan. He may have mentioned it, in passing. When? 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. He wanted to be sure of the approach. With complete composure. Linda stared at him. You knew for 3 weeks. Yes. And you said nothing. He asked me not to. I am your wife. And he is my associate, who asked for discretion. He looked at her now, with that expression, warm and direct. You also kept the seating arrangement from me until 40 minutes before dinner. Linda opened her mouth, closed it. That was different. Was it? Not a question. Linda looked at him. Siwan went back to his phone. The bedroom was quiet for a moment. Well, at least it worked. It worked. Leah will be impossible. She already is. It's one of her best qualities. Linda looked at him. He looked at her, and that small, warm thing moved between them the way it always had. Quickly, quietly, entirely theirs. The wedding was in spring. Cynthia wore ivory. Park Beck looked at her the entire ceremony with the expression of a man who had stood at a distance for 6 months and was done standing at distances of any kind. Linda stood beside Cynthia. Siwan stood beside Park Beck. Leah sat in the front row between Jiwon and Mrs. O, who had been invited because Leah had told Linda that Mrs. O was invested and therefore deserved to witness the outcome of her investment. Mrs. O sat in the front row with the expression of a woman who would not be describing this as emotional and was emotional. Cynthia did not cry, which Linda pointed out to her afterward. I was composed. You were, I noticed. I have grown. With enormous dignity. You cried louder than the bride at my wedding. That was a completely different kind of, you cried more than me at my own wedding, Cynthia. The occasion warranted it. This occasion I was the bride. I had to maintain standards. Linda looked at her best friend. At this woman in ivory who had called a mission crazy and found a staffing agency anyway, and cried through an entire ceremony and matched herself with a good man through the combined effort of a 12-year-old and a seating chart. She put her arm around her. Cynthia leaned in immediately. I'm really happy. Quietly. I know. He's a good man. He is. Tall, but good. Cynthia laughed. Linda smiled. They stood in the spring light together for a moment saying nothing. The dinner was 3 weeks later. Both families, Park Beck's parents, a quiet, composed Korean couple who had raised a man who listened and remembered things. Cynthia's mother, a Nigerian woman of considerable energy and opinions who had arrived from Lagos 2 days early and had already reorganized Cynthia's kitchen. The estate dining room, long table, good food, the particular warmth of a room full of people who had chosen each other in various ways and were now sitting down together for the first time. Ji-won was on his best behavior, which meant he sat at the table with the focused composure of someone who had been briefed on the importance of the occasion and had decided to cooperate. He said very little, observed everything, and at one point looked at Park Bayek's father with Siwon's exact expression for approximately 30 seconds until the man shifted slightly in his seat. Leah was impeccable. She always was in company, composed, attentive, asking the right questions of the right people at the right times. Cynthia's mother had declared her extraordinary within 20 minutes of meeting her, and Leah had received this with the dignified pleasure of someone whose assessment of herself had been externally confirmed. It was during the dessert course that it happened. Park Baek's younger brother was sitting across the table, 18 years old, quiet, slightly nervous in the way of someone at a table full of important people they didn't know yet. He looked up. Leah looked up. Their eyes met across the table. He smiled, small, slightly uncertain. Leah, composed, perceptive, 12 years old, looked at him for exactly one moment and smiled back. Linda beside her saw it. Cynthia across the table saw it. They both looked at each other simultaneously. Then they both leaned toward Leah from opposite sides at the same time. Leah, quietly, "We see you." With considerable delight. Leah straightened immediately, picked up her dessert spoon, looked at her plate with the focused concentration of someone who had absolutely not just smiled at anyone across any table and had no idea what anyone was referring to. "I don't know what you mean." "Of course you don't." Completely unclear. Leah ate her dessert with great dignity. Across the table, Park Baek's younger brother looked at his own plate with the particular expression of someone who was also suddenly very interested in dessert. Siwon, at the head of the table, had seen all of it, said nothing. He reached for his water glass, set it down, straightened his cuffs, then he turned his head very slightly to the right where one of his security detail was standing near the wall and made the smallest possible gesture. The security detail leaned down. Siwon said something very quietly. The security detail straightened, looked across the table at Park Bayek's younger brother with the particular professional attention of someone who had just received an instruction and was implementing it immediately and thoroughly. Park Bayek, beside Cynthia, had seen the gesture. He looked at Siwon. Siwon looked back at him with complete serenity and picked up his dessert spoon. Park Bayek looked at his own dessert. Cynthia, who had caught the tail end of all of this, looked at Linda. Linda looked at Siwon. Siwon ate his dessert with great composure and no further comment. Linda pressed her lips together very firmly. Some things she had learned did not need words. Leah was 12. And Jeon Siwon had not survived everything he had survived to be unprepared for what came next. And that is the story of a marriage that almost broke. And didn't. Because of a 12-year-old girl who knew exactly what to do with a document and a bin. Jeon Siwon kept his family, Linda Perot kept her husband, and Leah, who started all of this with 5 words at a gala, kept her secret, and her family, and everything she had spent years building with both hands. Cynthia got her love story, Park Bayek got his yes, and somewhere at a dinner table a boy smiled at Leah Jeon, and her father made one quiet gesture to his security. Because Jeon Siwon did not survive everything he survived to be caught off guard by a smile. If this story moved you, if Leah made you hold your breath, if Siwon made you exhale, if Linda made you want to be loved that thoroughly, share this with someone who needs it today. And if you have been here from the beginning, thank you for every comment, every view, every time you came back. This is the end of Linda and Siwon's story, but we have more stories where this one came from. Subscribe and come and find them. I will see you in the next one.